All right, what is going on, folks? Welcome to Chatterbox Reds live post game presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Craig, I tell you what, if they pull this one off tonight, I think you are required to be on all 19 post games the remainder of the season. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, if they pull this one off tonight, I think we're kicking Trace off the show, and it's just me and you the rest of the season.
Yeah. Craig got a mic, sounding fresh. Love it.
Let's go.
Love it. Yeah. Well, this has been a tough one, folks.
Yep. Other than the game, how's your day going, Nick?
You know, it's going okay. Not a whole lot, just a little bit of work, and excited for this game tonight. And excitement kind of waned quickly. But yeah, how about you, Craig? How was your day?
It was good. Nice little Friday. I've been a little under the weather the last couple of days.
Okay.
So I apologize in advance to anybody watching for any coughs. I'll do my best to mute myself when I need to cough. But no, I mean, was excited for this weekend as well. But there's still a chance to win the series, Nick.
Yeah.
And would have been nice to sweep, but at the end of the day, let's win the series. And it's not over. It's not over.
Well, you know,
they are bringing in Helsley.
I love that, to be honest.
Yep.
I mean, you can't imagine that they're gonna throw him. I don't want to say this, but they might not throw him back-to-back games. You know, just he's only. And we were talking about this, Craig, before the game started. You know, he's only this is only his third game back, coming back off injury. He was out for quite a while, so you can see some pitches off him. You might make him unavailable tomorrow, which certainly would be fortuitous.
Sure would. And I think he had like 3 or 4 days off between his first 2 appearances. He had obviously the day off yesterday for them. Maybe a couple days. I think the last time he pitched might have been the 5th. So I don't know. We'll see how many pitches we get off of him today, and then that'll probably dictate tomorrow. But no, I don't think they're looking to rush him back to pitching every day. That's for sure.
I will say Ollie Marmol has definitely managed this game to win. That is for sure.
Well, and to David Bell's credit, I think he managed the game to win as well. I mean, he went all out in the 6th. That just didn't pay off. I mean,
yeah,
we'll get into it, but that 6th inning.
Yeah, it was your shot.
That was your shot. But we've got Tyler Stevenson up at the plate.
Putrid talent. Shout out to you. I think you're a first-time super chatter. If not, appreciate you either way.
And strikeout swinging.
Yeah. Man, Red's not getting a lick of help today.
No. Good pitch from Helsley. I mean, Jordan Baker is known for having a somewhat large strike zone. I don't think that was that bad of a call.
Who was the one he had earlier in the game that was it was a Marty. Marty had one. It was a 0-1 pitch, and it was like way out. It's just brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. It would have been nice to get a cheap CES home run.
Yep.
Have him feeling good.
Well, going 1, 2, 3 in the 9th surely isn't going to make Helsley unavailable tomorrow, especially if Martini can't string together a little at bat here. 7 pitches through 2 batters.
Not what we were looking for.
Not what we were looking for here.
Ugh. Yeah. Helsley's still pumping him.
Throwing 100 miles an hour after being on the IL. Would have been nice to get Helsley unavailable for the next day or two. I mean, when he's healthy, he's one of the better closers in the game. I mean,
Yeah, I think he did blow a save against the Reds this year, though, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Marlins won too. Man, my God.
yeah, didn't get any help today.
Lord.
Did not get help today.
Dragons got eliminated. Just a brutal day. Yep. All right, well, Craig, you want to
I can think of one shining star for today, and we'll talk about it on the show. Speaking of which, let's do it, Nick.
High drive, left center field, racing back to the wall, Bourgeois. The Reds are National League Central Division champions. In the air, left center field. Did he? He did! He did! Reds win! Line into right field. Genius, the first run ever with 4 home runs in a game. Can you believe it? In the air down the right field line. Doesn't have a chance. The Reds have won on a 3-run home run on opening day by Ramon Hernandez. A strike away and out away is Homer Bailey. Ground ball to third. Frazier gloves. Throw to first, and Homer Bailey, for the second time in his major league career, has tossed a no-hitter. Oh, Garrison. Oh, are you kidding me? Holy Moses, the second player in major league history to hit 7 home runs in the first 10 games. In the air, and the Reds win it. What a dream beginning to the career of Jay Bruce.
All right, what's going on? Nick Kirby, Craig Sandlin. Welcome to Chatterbox Reds Live, your post-game show on a tough night for the Reds as they fall 9-4 to the St. Louis Cardinals. Craig, just not a fun night for the old Red Legs.
Not a fun night. My magic wore off a little bit. Couldn't bring it home for the squad. I apologize to everybody in the chat. But look, couple high notes, a lot of low notes, and some encouraging news out of the minors today as well that we'll get into. So not all is lost. We still have a series to win. 2 more this weekend with the Cardinals. Didn't get a whole lot of help around the league, but a lot of baseball left to play, Nick.
Yeah, and let's we'll jump right into it with the old box score recap. Top of the first, Andrew Abbott struck out Tommy Edman on 3 pitches. Got a weak pop-up of Tyler O'Neill looking good early, but then he walked Paul Goldschmidt. Nolan Arenado reached on an error by Noelvi Marte, and then Wilson Contreras hit an absolute bomb 440 feet into the bleachers. And just like that, it was 3-0 St. Louis. Top of the third, it was literally deja vu. Abbott walked Paul Goldschmidt with 2 outs. Nolan Arenado singled. Wilson Contreras walked, and then Lucan Baker hit a cheap double down the line, just 80 miles an hour off the bat. That cleared the bases, and it was 6-0 Cardinals. Not going to win a whole lot of baseball games when you fall behind 6-0. But the Reds did. They fought back. Bottom of the third, Hunter Renfroe hit his first home run with the Reds, a 2-run home run, number 20 on the season for him. That made it 6-2. Then later in the inning, Nick Senzel hit a home run. Senzel's got 11 home runs this season. That made it 6-3. Bottom of the fourth, Reds stole a run from the Cardinals. Noelvi Marte singled. Harrison Bader hit a ball well that looked like a surefire double off the bat, but Jordan Walker made a great throw to get Bader at second base. But then Spencer Steer was hit by a pitch. Steer then stole second base. Cardinals second baseman Nolan Gorman must have forgot there was a runner on third. He looked down, and Noelvi Marte scored easily. And that got the Reds to a 6-4 deficit fighting back. But the Reds, they left runners on first and third in the fifth. And then a big spot that I'm sure we'll talk about, Reds left the bases loaded in the 6th inning as David Bell really emptied his entire bench to try to get back in this. Unfortunately, Fernando Cruz just back off the COVID IL. He had been rolling, had a lot of run in his last 10 2/3 innings. But on this night, he walked a batter, hit a batter, had a wild pitch, and he ended up giving up 2 runs to the Cardinals. That made it 8-4. Cardinals got another run off TJ Antone in the 8th. That made it 9-4. And that would be your final score. Craig, let's just kind of go through this. We'll start with Andrew Abbott. Obviously, the walks were the killer tonight, and we've mentioned it a lot on this show. When he doesn't walk guys, he's really, really hard to beat. When he walks guys, he's pretty beatable. I don't want to make too much out of this outing because if Noelvi Marte makes that play, it might be a different game in some respects. But the feelings that we had prior to that really incredible start against the Cubs where he looks like he's running out of gas. I don't know if I ever really felt like he was like running on fumes tonight, but kind of back in the spot where you really have to be concerned. What are you going to be able to get out of Andrew Abbott over these last 3 weeks of the season?
Well, as pitchers get tired, they lose mechanics, and ultimately that's what it comes down to, right? So for me, there were 2 stories to this game. One offensively, which the chat has touched on a lot before we even started tonight, and the other one was on the mound and walks. In the 6 innings that Reds pitching did not give up a walk, so 6 innings that the Reds pitching did not give up a walk, 4 hits, 1 run. Obviously, the 3 innings that they did give up a walk, we know the story and how that went. So yeah, you look at the first 3 innings and the 2 innings specifically where Abbott had damage done. He retired the first 2 batters in both of those innings, and then a walk. And like you said in the intro, nearly identical to what happened. Walk, single, home run in the first, walk, single, walk, double in the third. And that's really your story. I mean, you get down 6-0 and you're having to try to claw back from the very beginning. And while this Reds team has shown ability to hit the bullpen and score runs late in games, getting down 6-0 is not exactly a mental space that you want a young team to be in. And I think that's really what it came down to tonight.
Yeah, I mean, look, to the Reds' credit, they did fight back. When you fall down 6-0, your chances of winning are very, very slim. The Reds got it to 6-4. They had the tying run on. They had the go-ahead run on base at one point in this game. So they did fight back. Look, the Cardinals have a good offense. If you listen to the podcast this morning, I ran through the numbers. They've been an above-average offense in the second half. Offense really has not been their problem. It's been pitching, which you could kind of see at times tonight. Matthew Liberatore, a guy that's really been bad for them all year, made one really, really good pitch to Tyler Stevenson. And that really was maybe the difference in winning and losing tonight. Some of these games, it can be such a finite line between winning and losing. And this was a tough one. But to the offense, I know the left on the runners left on base is what everyone wants to talk about, and I get it. I'm still encouraged by the offense, especially where we were 2 weeks ago. I mean, they had 10 hits tonight. They had plenty of chances. The name of the game for me is all about getting chances. I'll worry about average with runners in scoring position and all those kind of things when we see game after game after game after game of getting chances. Get chances. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's kind of where I'm at. And they at least this last week, they've been giving themselves a lot of chances. And if they continue to do this, I think they'll be successful over these last couple weeks of the season.
I talked about it the last time I was on. At the end of the day, when the Reds went on their 12-game winning streak, and they even talked about it on the broadcast tonight, it wasn't about hitting home runs. It wasn't about all those things. It was about stringing together quality at-bats and quality innings and scoring runs. And I think they're doing exactly that now. They're just not getting the run production that you would expect from the type of production they're getting at the plate. So you talk about 10 hits. They had plenty of opportunities tonight. They're just not getting the runs across the plate. I think it's a combination of you've got a young team who in high pressure situations has to be able to come through, and that'll come with comfort. But also it just timing and luck. I mean, yeah, Liberatore made a really good pitch to Stevenson. What is it in the zone? Probably not. But that's not a pitch that very many major league hitters are going to be taking in a 3-2 count in that situation. I mean, it's coming from a left-handed pitcher down and into your right-handed batter, barely inside and down, maybe. Really quality pitch. You tip your cap, you move on. It just sucks that that pitch happened to come with bases loaded and Tyler Stevenson being a go-ahead run, versus some of the situations that we talk about with the Cardinals where they're capitalizing on those opportunities. And I don't think it has anything to do with the pressure getting to the team. It might maybe a little bit, but it just kind of happens. And Liberatore made a good pitch, and again, you tip your cap and move on.
And just to kind of expand on it a little bit, so coming into the game tonight, look at the Reds' season-long numbers. The Reds with runners in scoring position hitting .251 on the year. That's their batting average. The Reds' team batting average in the year is .248. So it hasn't been specifically a not being able to get clutch hits. It's just at times they haven't been good enough offensively. I really don't think it's a clutch versus not clutch thing. I think that's the easy thing to point to. I just think the Reds need to overall have better at bats, and I do think over the last at least week they've done that. Let's get into a couple guys in particular. One guy really encouraging to see 2 hits tonight, both hard hit balls. One of them a home run, Hunter Renfroe, a guy that the Reds got. The Reds really need him to be a power guy because that's been a huge struggle for the Reds of late. Hit a home run tonight. Good to see him finally get something going.
Really good to see him get going, and 3 really good at bats too to start the game. I mean, he starts the game in the first inning with I think a 9-pitch single, 9-pitch at bat that resulted in a single. Obviously, he takes the first pitch in the 3rd inning for a home run. It works a walk in the 6th, and so yeah, good to get him going. If you can get him and Bader both kind of working their magic a little bit, this team becomes instantly better. So it was good to see him get going a little bit. The 2 RBIs were nice, and after getting down 6-0 to be able to come back and be 6-3 puts the team in a different headspace, and pretty big home run there in the moment, at least it felt like.
Yeah, another ho-hum night for Spencer Steer, 2 hits. CES 2 hits also came sort of maybe a little close to a home run in the 9th. CES continuing to swing the bat well. We'll talk more about him a little later when we kind of go through the Reds minor leagues, which is going to lead into some potential challenging moves for the Reds and David Bell going forward. So David Bell, the other thing really to kind of look at, David Bell went for broke in this game. When you're down 6-0, you obviously need to do everything you can to get offense to give yourself a chance. And in some regards, they did. I guess it was controversial to some. I didn't really think it was controversial, but my Twitter mentions would say otherwise. David Bell decided to go to Tyler Stevenson with the bases loaded in the 6th inning. Reds were down 6-4, 2 outs. So it's pretty much make or break moment in this game. He goes to Stevenson against Matthew Liberatore, pinch hitting for Friedel. And we talked about Friedel a lot on this show. Friedel is one guy that has hit lefties better throughout his career. I think if you kind of look maybe a little bit deeper, you could probably say that overall he probably profiles as a hitter that eventually will be a better hitter against right-handed pitching, but he's a capable hitter for sure against lefties. But Tyler Stevenson has been absolutely on fire, hitting .375, .412, .667 over his last 51 plate appearances. Just has been playing his best baseball of the year. And then Matthew Liberatore is a guy that if he could face lefties exclusively would be a damn good pitcher. Great career numbers against lefties, but against right-handed batters. He's got given up an OPS over 900 in his career so far. I like the move going to Stevenson. I thought it gave you your best chance. Stevenson just didn't come through. It happens. The best hitters are going to be successful, 1 out of every 3 times or so. I like the move. I liked going for broke. I also found it. Well, let's just talk about that, and then we'll talk about some of the defensive moves and what all maybe that meant. What do you think about that going for broke tonight?
I think the people that are complaining about that are the same people that say your closer should only be thrown in the 9th inning. At the end of the day, you want your best players in the situation where you need them the most. And in that situation, you have bases loaded. Yes, Friedel has a 316 split against lefties this year. I get that, but it's limited situations versus literally maybe the hottest hitter in your lineup, certainly one of the top 3 in your lineup, in Tyler Stevenson. And I don't think there was even a question in my mind when I saw Friedel was coming up on deck that he wasn't going to be hitting in that situation. So my mind immediately went to Tyler Stevenson coming into that situation, and it didn't work out, but that doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. And you've said that exact same phrase, feels like 100 times throughout this season. People like to think that David Bell over manages just because sometimes the decisions don't work out. That doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. Tyler Stevenson, like you said, is red hot right now. He had an opportunity to go up against a left-handed pitcher. I don't think there's any question that 95% of the managers in this league would do the exact same thing. I think in that moment, you're down. You need that opportunity. You may not get it again, especially because you know that Helsley, again, one of the better closers in the league. So once you get to that 9th, you may not have an opportunity. The Cardinals bullpen in general is not great. So you could have thought that you would have another opportunity in the next 2 innings, but I think you have to strike while the iron is hot. And in that opportunity, that was the move, and it had to be made.
And I always like to look at moves like this. Put yourself in Matthew Liberatore's shoes. Who do you think Matthew Liberatore would have rather faced? I guarantee you he would have rather faced TJ Friedel than Tyler Stevenson. So look, it didn't happen tonight. But I do like the overall thought of when you're down, going for broke, saying the hell with the defense. You do whatever you can to get back in the game. I'm a big defense guy. Defense absolutely matters. But when you're down runs, there's it's more of, you're you're at the casino, you're down to $5. You're not going to come out with $100 if you keep betting, a quarter at a time, right? You're going to have to put something down to give yourself a chance to get to leave successful. And I liked going for it. There's been other managers the Reds have had in the past that would be like, oh, I got to keep my guy for a situation that may or may not happen. And I'm just like, why? What's the point of that? That was the spot. And as the game played out, it even made it more apparent that was the spot in the game. It just didn't happen tonight. But let's talk about the moves that happened, because we saw Tyler Stevenson play first base for the first time in forever. It's been a long time since he's played first base. We saw Christian Encarnacion Strand play right field. CES did play a couple games in the minors. I don't think they want to start him in the outfield, but I think they feel comfortable if it's a situation like that for a couple innings. It's not the end of the world. And Jake Fraley was never used because Jake Fraley could have came in as a defensive replacement. And I think that's pretty big, because we'll get to what they did tonight in a second, but it sounds like Jonathan India and Joey Votto might be back very soon. You can't play Joey Votto, Christian Encarnacion Strand, and Jake Fraley at the same time unless you're playing Christian Encarnacion Strand at a position other than first base. So, but I do like Tyler Stevenson at least being available to play first base, because I think it gives you more options, because the Reds right now have too many guys that are like first base DH only guys, right?
100%. Going back to what you were saying before, CES is gonna have to play either first base or outfield. Like, unless he's spelling Marte at third for a game here and there. If you want to get him at bats, it means he's got to be in first base, outfield, or DH. That's it. Tyler Stevenson, we have talked on this show. The people in the chat have talked plenty. He may or may not be your catcher of the future, right? Now, offensively, he's been superb. Defensively, not as much. But getting him at bats any way you can, especially if he can hit like he has for the last number of games, you need that bat in your lineup. And so having the flexibility, whether it's DH, first base, that'll be positive for the Reds moving forward and in the years to come. But yeah, Stevenson's not going to play the outfield. CES has the opportunity to, but you're not going to fit all four of those guys into the lineup at once. So it was interesting to see that move. But I think, again, when you go for it in the sixth, like you did, and Fraley is the only guy you have left, it almost becomes like an emergency situation where you have to keep him on the bench in case something comes up and you need it. Because as much as you went for broke there, you also still have to be planning for the future. So whether that was he can't play defense because of his foot, or we want to save him, I guess we don't really know. But I think probably more so that we need to make sure that we have somebody on the bench should we need him.
Yeah.
At that point in the game.
All right, before we get into some Reds MILB, we will also maybe take some questions here at the end if anyone's got any. A couple other things in this game that I feel like were worth mentioning. Shout out Buck Farmer, pitched, got 4 outs, didn't allow a run. Shout out Chasen Sharif, pitched a perfect inning with a strikeout. I think he's looked pretty good. Other than that home run to Cody Bellinger, which, Cody Bellinger's a pretty good hitter. He's looked really sharp and has been, I think, a nice weapon for the Reds. You got something on Sharif?
Nope. I just have a feeling I know where you're going. So go ahead and keep going down the path.
TJ Antone gave up a run. Oh, well. Derek Law pitched a scoreless inning. Shout out Derek Law. And then the guy that I did want to talk a little bit about was Fernando Cruz. Obviously struggled tonight with his command. Still struck out 2 batters. You see why guys like me love Fernando Cruz, because he's got some incredible talent, some incredible swing and miss talent, which you love. But it was the guy's first game back from being on the COVID IL, being rusty. I mean, it was when you're down, that's a good spot to pitch him in his first game back. Yes, it kind of did put the game out of hand, but you'd rather him pitch tonight down 6-4 than tomorrow for the first time when you're up 2-1 or something like that. I don't have any worries with Fernando Cruz. You have any worries with Cruz? I think he's still a very valuable bullpen arm for this team down the stretch.
I don't have any concerns at all. I think one of the things, as I was watching the game, that I was thinking through, and I don't know all the rules. I'm not going to pretend that I know what Fernando Cruz did with his time. But the difference between the IL and the COVID IL is that not only was he not able to play in games, but he wasn't even allowed to be around the facility, if I understand correctly. And so you're talking about probably a 5 to 7 day stretch where he's not at the facility getting in work, right? Now, he may have an opportunity privately to go get a workout in or whatever it may be, but he's probably not on his standard work routine and regimen, right? So this, for all we know, this may have been the first time he had pitched off a mound in a week. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, obviously, but coming off the COVID IL, 7 days, 8 days, whatever it ended up being, he probably hadn't thrown, getting a feel for the ball and back on the field. I don't have any long-term concerns for him. Coming into tonight, since August 1st, I mean, he had a 2.25 ERA and was striking out 14.25 per 9. I mean, he struck out again too tonight, like you mentioned. I think the stuff is still there. He'll just need to figure out, he just got to get comfortable again. I don't think there's anything to that.
And I think you see maybe with what Cruz did tonight, why the Reds didn't pitch Hunter Green tonight, because Hunter Green was eligible to pitch tonight, but they elected to push him back to Sunday. That also might be to get another start out of Carson Spires, because he's technically, I think, a replacement player. So there might be some manipulating the 40-man roster and all that with that. But I mean, there's definitely some concerns though with Hunter Green. I'm not going to sugarcoat it when you see what Fernando Cruz did after his time off. Man, it just sucks for Hunter Cruz. Hunter. If combine those two, man, that'd be lights out. They probably still walk a lot of guys though, but
yeah, the question is, I just don't know what he's able to do. Obviously, he's not activated from the COVID list right now. Won't be probably until Sunday morning, so I don't know what kind of off-season workouts he's allowed, or not off-season, but off-day workouts he's able to do. Maybe you have insight into that.
Yeah, I think Hunter
was at
back
the game tonight.
Well, I think he was back with the team like on Monday or Tuesday. So he's been back for a while, and so maybe that gives a little more fingers crossed hope that he can jump right back in, because I mean, man, you really need him.
Yeah, and like you said, potentially knowing that the starting rotation is a little banged up, Spires didn't look terrible in his first start. So, maybe manipulate it a little bit and throw him out there again and see what you can get.
Yeah, you're trying to buy innings any way you can at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds bad to say, but looking at the matchups and what you had, you may have thought that you had 2 out of 3 anyway with Abbott and Green, and maybe you felt like Saturday you could afford something like that, but who knows? There's a lot of things that go into decisions like this. But yeah, you've got a starting rotation that's banged up, and that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some Reds MILB, and I think there'll be some good discussion along with this. So we'll start off with the Louisville Bats, and the Louisville Bats top 3 lineup today was Jonathan India, Kevin Newman, and Joey Votto. So definitely a fun night for Louisville. They did lose 7-6. Bats now, they're just 2 games over 500. That was looking like they were finally going to have their first season over 500 since 2011. So they got their work cut out for them to, they still got I think 14 games left. But nonetheless, you're not here to hear about the Louisville Bats record. You're here to hear about what the rehabbing guys did. Start off with a really, really good. Jonathan India looked awesome tonight. 1 for 2, walked. The walk, I think, was a 9-pitch walk. The out was a ball that maybe was a home run at Great American Ballpark. It was smoked off the bat up against the wall, and then the double also bounced off the wall, hit really hard as well. So Jonathan India looked awesome. We thought Jonathan India was the guy that was going to do 5 rehab games. I don't know. Maybe, especially with a righty on Sunday, I doubt they're going to activate India on Sunday. But he very well might be back on Tuesday against the Tigers next week. So he looked great. Kevin Newman, who was 0 for 9 coming in, was 3 for 5 tonight. I don't really know what the Reds' plan with Kevin Newman is. If I'm guessing, I'm assuming Newman's just probably insurance right now, kind of like Kirk Casale was. And then when the rehab's done, you just kind of put him in no man's land. I don't really know what the plan would be. Joey Votto did double, so that was the positive. Did strike out twice. Both strikeouts were on check swings. Kind of still felt to me like, I was trying to watch Votto's at bats while also trying to watch the Reds game, since we do cover that. It looked to me like Votto's still maybe cheating a little bit, like we saw before. So some concerns. The double wasn't necessarily smoked. It was like 92 off the bat. Nice swing though, took it the other way. And then the other out was a lazy fly out. So, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Jacob Hurtubise was 2 for 4, hitting .429 for Dayton. So he's crushing it. And one really downer, Brett Kennedy got shelled, 7 earned runs in 3 innings. So I think maybe Brett Kennedy's giving the Reds all he can get. So we'll get to the rest of the Reds minor league in a second, but I want to stop there and talk about what everyone wants to talk about, I'm sure, today is where you're going to play all these guys, because that's That's the question. As we set it up earlier, it doesn't seem like you could play Votto, Fraley, and CES together, which is a problem.
Well, let's start with this, Nick. Before we even get to where everybody plays, I think the obvious answer is Stu. Sorry, Nick. Who else? Obviously, as you love to talk about, a lot of stuff can change between now and then. But let's say Votto and India both show you enough that they are ready to come back and be on the big league roster. Play Nick Krall and David Bell. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, Stu's the guy. I hate to say it. I'm a big Stuart Fairchild fan. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely the odd man out here. There's no question about that. Who's the next guy, though? I mean, Nick Senzel homer tonight. He's looked pretty good in his platoon role.
Let's be realistic here. Your options: Senzel homer tonight. Martini's been on fire. Will Benson. I mean,
no,
I legitimately, and I we can go through the active position players. I mean, Ellie's not going anywhere. CES isn't going anywhere. Noelvi's not going anywhere. Senzel has to be an option. Steer's not going anywhere. Bader's not going anywhere. Benson, Fairchild have to be options. Fraley's not going anywhere unless they decide that his toe is just not able to be played on anymore. Friedel's not going anywhere. Martini and Renfroe. Like,
getting both of the guys on the roster is hard.
100%. And look, we were talking about this today. Unless Joey Votto destroys the baseball at AAA, it's legitimately hard to justify a position on this team for him right now. And I think India is a no-brainer. He brings you power and he brings you the team loves him, the leadership, obviously. I have no doubt that Jonathan India will have a spot on this team and Stu will be sent down. I do not know what happens with Joey Votto, and we talked about it when it happened. Unless something changes, we may have seen the last of Joey Votto on this team, even if he does play. I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't know how you justify giving him a position on the 25-man right, or on the 26-man right now.
28-man.
28-man right now.
You have 28-man, and we've had an offense that's kind of struggling, but we can't find a way to get two guys on this roster. And yeah, I mean, Fairchild obviously is the guy that goes.
I think we can both agree. India for Fairchild. Fairchild's gone. If Votto, I mean, that's your question. I'm putting you in position right now. If barring injuries, obviously knock on wood, 3, 4, 5 days from now, when it's time to make a decision on Joey Votto, what are you doing?
I don't know. I was very shocked that David Bell was so confident that we're planning on activating him on Sunday. I mean, Nick Martini, I guess, has to be the odd man out just because of your left-right things. Because, again, I still think Senzel gives you – let's run through the lineup that was tonight, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, basically, Jonathan India can replace Stuart Fairchild in the lineup, and that's your lineup against left-handed pitchers. You're moving some guys around, but that's the gist of it. And your lineup set. And I think Senzel deserves to be in the lineup the way he's hit lefties. He had a home run tonight. Against righties, you have to sit one of your left-handed batters to get Joey Votto and Jonathan India into the lineup. Right? And you still have to sit one of CES or Noelvi Marte on top of it. So I guess it's Nick Martini or Will Benson. I have a difficult time believing with what we saw out of Joey Votto And I hate to say this, I just have a difficult time believing what we saw to Joey Votto the last couple weeks, and I know he was hurt, that he's a for sure better option than Nick Martini or Will Benson. That's where I just really struggle with this whole thing.
I cannot believe I'm about to say what I'm going to say. You can't, I don't think you can send down Martini right now. I mean, I think the way he's played the last 2+ weeks, he's earned a chance. And not that Benson has been terrible, but Benson almost feels like the odd man out in this situation if you believe that Votto is a guy that you want on your roster. Like, but now we're also talking about, let's bring this up. We're talking in that situation of replacing, you're bringing in 2 infielders / DHs and replacing 2 outfielders, right? And India has said before that he's not interested in playing in the outfield. And so it still leaves you with Bader, Friedel, and Renfroe, but Fraley, potentially based on tonight, may not be available defensively. So it leaves you with 4 outfielders that are capable of playing the outfield. I mean, theoretically, obviously Steer could go back out there. We saw CES play tonight. So it's not like you don't have options, but in terms of being true outfielders, you're left with maybe 4. And Benson, we've seen him defensively make plenty of questionable routes. So I'm not even sure that he's the best option. And for the people in the chat saying sit India or sit whatever, I refuse to give up on this race. Like, we're gonna be in the playoffs. And so I'm not listening to any of what you're saying. But I don't envy the Reds front office right now and having to make a decision on what to do with this team in the coming week.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I guess you could send down Senzel and Fairchild, and then you have to play TJ Friedel against lefties, which is not the end of the world. But again, I think Nick Senzel has proven at this point that he's a capable hitter against left-handed pitching based on what he's done all year. So I don't know. Maybe you can also look ahead and see how many lefties you actually have coming up. And maybe that actually has something to do with it. Maybe there really isn't that many lefties with the Tigers, the Mets, the Twins, the Pirates, the Guardians, and the Cardinals again. But man, yeah, this is tough. I mean, I guess you're gonna have a better bench, though. I mean, I guess it's Mark saying it right in the chat. It's a good problem to have this many players that are capable. But I'd be lying to you. I would be completely lying to you if I'm not nervous that the Reds are going to be sitting a guy they shouldn't. And that's what makes me nervous about some of the comments that were made today.
I mean, I think that this conversation has shown that regardless of what happens, someone who is deserving of a spot on this active roster is going to have to not be on the active roster. I don't know.
It's tough. And look,
this is why we do this for free and why the Reds front office gets paid the big bucks.
Well, and look, this all could solve itself out. Like Jake Fraley
100%.
Jake Fraley is doing everything he can, but he very well might be on borrowed time, and he may have something over the next 2 days that he needs to go back on the IL, and then this whole conversation is a complete waste of time, as many of these conversations end up being. But I did feel like it was worth talking about. It's a lot more difficult situation than I think a lot of people are making, but nonetheless, very encouraged what I saw out of Jonathan India tonight. He looked very good, very comfortable at the plate, and he could be a really huge help to this team, especially against left-handed pitching. He's a guy that has some serious power, which is something this lineup's lacking a little bit right now. I like what I've seen out of Noelvi Marte, but if you had to move Noelvi Marte to the bench a few times, especially you can maybe pick some good matchups for Marte. Marte can come in later in the game and be a defensive replacement. That also, is beneficial as well. But yeah, nonetheless, a lot of moves. And India did play second base today. I didn't see how he looked defensively or anything like that, but he did play second base the whole time he was in. So that's worth noting as well.
Are we safe to assume that Newman is just a DFA once he is done?
Or they do the whole Casale thing where he just gets done with his rehab assignment and they list him as still on the injured list, even though he's clearly not injured, and they're just basically keeping him. They clearly had some agreement with Casale. We prefer to keep you around in case someone gets hurt. And Casale's like, yeah, I don't really probably feel like, getting put on waivers and going somewhere else. I'd rather stick in, because he's been in the Reds dugout every night. So he's still probably helping the team, and he's an insurance policy just in case, God forbid Maley or Stevenson go down. And that's might be the same thing with Kevin Newman. And if you're Kevin Newman at this point, do you really want to go get put on waivers this late in the season? Because you're not going to be postseason eligible. You can't go play with any other team in the postseason.
Right.
You probably just, ride out the rehab assignment till the end, see if someone gets hurt and there's a spot for you. And then if not, you go on that like injured reserve list and you're just kind of in the waiting in case something happens. So, and it's also interesting too, Craig, because if somehow the Reds do get in the playoffs, some of these guys that have been in limbo, you're not going to carry 14 pitchers in the playoffs. You might only carry 10 or 11. So you might see guys like Stuart Fairchild that maybe we haven't seen for 2 weeks get on a playoff roster if somehow the Reds are actually able to get on the playoffs. So, all right, let's run through the rest of these Reds minor league. Not as much exciting outside of Louisville. That's why I did kind of want to make sure that we knocked that out. Chattanooga, they lost 5-3 to Montgomery. Lookouts, of course, still counting down the days until the playoffs. I believe they start on September 21st. They've already qualified. That Blake Dunn fella, he hit another home run. He's got 15 at Chattanooga, 2 for 4 today. So another good day for Reese Hines. Then the Dayton Dragons, they were unfortunately eliminated for the season. They fought till the end. They have 2 games left, tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, and then their season's over. They lost 7-1 to Fort Wayne tonight, officially eliminating them. But they're 66-64, so they need to win one of the next 2 to have a finish the season above 500. That would be their 3rd straight season, I believe, above 500. Really not a whole lot going on in this game. Of course, the game you lose 7-1 typically isn't. Hunter Parks started the game. He's the guy that their play-by-play announcer, Thom Nichols, said that scouts are looking at more than anyone. It was okay. 4 innings pitched, 4 earned runs, 4 walks, did strike out 5. Hector Rodriguez was 2 for 4 with a double. Really the only guy that had a good night. Arroyo was 0 for 5. South Stewart 0 for 2, did walk twice. Carlos Jorge 0 for 3 with a walk. And then the Daytona Tortugas, in their last week of the season, they had another rainout. I don't understand how a team in Florida has as many rainouts as that team does. I feel like they get rained out every other night. But Michael Rolfe, chat for the fun. This chat is I'm on a smaller screen. What is that? A roller coaster. Right. Cheers to Craig, or good luck, Charm, and Nick. Also, shameless plug to Haggle X to get me unbanned. Michael Rolfe, someone with an iPhone 9 hacked my account. Michael, you are a wild man. We appreciate you. I don't. Do you have any connections, Craig, to do the?
I'll just dial up Elon. It'll be fine. I'll get you taken care of, Michael.
Well, Chad, if you have any ideas for Michael, how to get him out of Twitter jail, let me know. All right, we'll take some more questions, and then we'll talk about tomorrow's game. Really important game for the Reds. I did star 2 in the chat, so we'll get to those, and then if there's any others, I'll put them in there. If you already mentioned earlier, just put it in again. I can't see everything. Good question from Chet the Jet. Should Maley still be Abbott's personal catcher? I thought this was an interesting topic. I mean, I think at this point in the season, in my opinion, I wouldn't mess with it if he's caught him every single game all year. it's wild how we feel how the roller coaster with Tyler Stevenson this year. I imagine if someone asked that question 2 weeks ago. I don't know. I don't really have an issue with it at this point. Stevenson needs days off anyways. Is that where you're at?
I agree. I think, first of all, yes, I don't think there's any need to mess with anything right now. I also think that personal catchers are crazy. Like, I'm not personally a personal catcher believer. I think realistically, whichever catcher is now, granted, we have 2 right-handed hitting catchers, and maybe it doesn't matter that much, and the splits offensively don't matter. But putting me on the spot, do I think that he should continue to be for this year? Yeah. Moving forward, I don't really know that personal catchers make that big of a difference to a pitcher other than mentally. Now, maybe Abbott is like, that's my guy and I got to stick with him. But you can correct me if I'm wrong, but how many games did Abbott pitch to Maile before this year? Any in the minors or anything?
No.
So now all of a sudden he's his personal catcher because he started his career with 3 great games, and that just means that Maile needs to be his personal catcher forever. Like, I'm not a believer in that whole idea to begin with. Now, I also don't think that Maile has anything to do with the fact that Abbott has been struggling for the last month or whatever. So I don't want this to be a knock on Maile or anything like that. I just don't think that the whole idea of a personal catcher even needs to be a thing, personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think Stevenson needs to catch Andrew Abbott, but I think it can be in 2024. I think this can definitely be something that's delayed, and I don't think there's any reason to rush it right now. But good question.
Now, the one thing I would say is I would still love to see the Reds go out and get a veteran catcher who potentially could help these young pitchers. You have to remember that our pitching staff, save for a potential veteran that we had this offseason, is extremely young. And so whether that veteran catcher is catching every day or not, that person could serve extremely beneficial for the Reds pitching staff through preparation and all of these other things. And quite frankly, could probably help Tyler Stevenson. So should Maile be Abbott's personal catcher? No. Should the Reds go out and sign a veteran catcher for next year? I certainly would like to see that happen.
Question for you.
Yep.
Is Luke Maile not a veteran catcher? Like, Luke Maile's 32 years old. I mean, I know he's kind of he was up and down in the minors, but really since 2018, I mean, he played at least 40 games every season outside of 2021 since 2016. I like Luke Maile. I'd like to see him back.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I mean,
I see what you're saying about going and getting like a more veteran guy, but I also like Luke Maile, and I don't really want to get rid of him. I feel like he does fit really well with this team.
Yeah, and it's tough to justify 3 catchers, but if Stevenson is potentially going to be filling a DH role or even in at first base every once in a while, I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Maile's got the experience. I just don't know that he, outside of one heated mountain visit with Sims a couple days ago, I don't know. I just don't know that he adds a whole lot to the pitching staff. Just from observation, I have no idea what happens behind doors, all of those things, but I do know that the catcher is an extension of your pitching staff.
Yeah.
And having a mentor for that young pitching staff is beneficial. And maybe Maile is that guy and we just don't see it.
What the Reds do this offseason with their catching position is one of the most interesting things to watch, because it could go multiple ways. They could trade Tyler Stevenson this offseason, just say, hey, we're moving on, and then we're going to go get like a more defensive-minded catcher, and maybe we sign Luke Maile back as well, and he's our backup to that guy. They could Obviously, just roll with Tyler Stevenson and keep Luke Maile. They could roll with Tyler Stevenson and go get another more established catcher. It's definitely a fascinating thing to watch what they do this offseason.
Yeah, Maile is an unrestricted free agent this year, so that decision will be big. And if they do decide to let him walk, who they replace him with will be big. I think we all can agree that person is not in the minors right now. They are not in the Red system, so it's either going to be Maile and Stevenson, or they're going to be going out and getting somebody else. So
yeah, there's some good guys in the minors for sure, but they're not 2024 ready. They might be 2025. You might have some real solid options, but they're not going to be ready at the start of 2024 for sure. I do think the Reds have a massive upper hand with Luke Maile just because he has a house in the Cincinnati area. He's from Cincinnati. I can't imagine Luke Maile wants to go anywhere else if the Reds offer him anything competitive to anyone else. In fact, I could see Luke Maile taking, maybe $100,000 or $200,000 less to play for the Reds than, whoever else. But Carrie asked, when is Williamson back? I believe he's eligible. I didn't see. I checked the Reds injury thing and report, and he has not been back with the team yet. Again, I think that they're probably not going to rush these guys back because the Fernando Cruz situation we talked about earlier, and they don't have to. The Reds are off on Monday, so they do kind of have have been able to buy some time. So, but I would imagine he'll probably be back next week at some point, hopefully.
Yeah, it's been 6 days for him now. So I think it was the second when they announced that he was going on the COVID IL. I don't remember if he was retro to a day or two previous or not. But if it was the second, which is what I'm seeing in an article, I just can't see if he's retro or not. He wouldn't even be eligible to come back. Oh, there you go.
Shout out, Steve. You were paying better attention than me. I guess he was.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, if he was in the dugout, then I would expect he's probably starting some point in that Tiger series next week.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's huge. That's huge.
But no reason to activate him beforehand, obviously. So keep the roster where it is now and get through the next 2 days, and then we'll see what the rotation looks like going into the Tiger series.
Yeah, you want to keep as many pitchers as you can. So yeah. Tanner brings up a point. This is a good point, but I'm gonna debunk it. Sorry. Kroll let Abbott down, not getting any bodies around him for a few starts. I mean, I just feel like this is really, Tanner, with all due respect, I just feel like this is really going overboard on a situation completely out of their control with COVID. I mean, Hunter Green's on the COVID IL, Ben Lively's on the COVID IL, Brandon Williams on the COVID IL, and then Graham Ashcraft gets hurt. I think the Reds had every intention of shutting down Andrew Abbott or giving him a week or two off. And I think they just kind of ran into a situation where it was impossible without just completely giving away the season. Right? Right. Am I wrong on that, Craig?
Oh, I mean, who predicted this? I mean, not only that, who predicted Abbott struggling this much over the last month and a half? I mean, nobody let him down. We just talked about it. I mean, there's so many injuries and sickness and everything going around. I mean, I don't have any. No. We've been debating whether or not he should even take a day off anyway, let alone whether or not Kroll failed him to be able to give him that option. Like, let's not sit here and act like we all are 100% in agreement that he even needs a day off. Don't get me started. We're good.
All right. Oh, I put the wrong. And then Ohio Lakers 5-1-3. We talked about Senzel earlier. I think he should stay. I think he might be the odd man out. Just because if you really start going through all the players, it's not a whole lot of options. He might be the odd man out. He does have the option. He can be optioned to AAA. But I feel like you're weakening your lineup against left-handed pitching by sending him down for the reward for maybe not even making your lineup better against right-handed pitching.
Is this question in relation to this year or moving forward?
Oh, I assume that was this year. Going forward, I think he very well might be moved this offseason. He starts getting a little too expensive for what his roles become.
Yeah. That's the way I took that question was because we've already addressed whether or not he stays for this year. I think that's up in the air, but I think after this year, for sure, he becomes too expensive for the role that he's filling. And I think we have other players that can fill in.
Yeah.
I don't really see a scenario where Nick Senzel is a Red next year, if I'm being honest.
I see a scenario where he's a Red next year, but I think he's going to get traded or non-tendered, probably non-tendered, if I'm being honest, because he was already, I think, making $2.4 million. You can't go backwards in salary. If you play, you almost always go up. So I think he'll get non-tendered, but I could see a situation where, Nick Senzel says, "Hey, look, the Reds overall have been pretty good to me through my struggles." I have no idea how Nick Senzel feels about the team. Sometimes I feel like he really likes being on the Reds, and other times I don't. But I don't know. He may also get a better offer somewhere else. So, yeah, that's what I see. One more from before we get to Michael Rolfe, just crushing it in here as well. What do we expect about Hunter Green on Sunday? And I said this before the COVID injury. The Reds desperately need Hunter Green. I mean, they need him to step up. I don't feel like we're being fair to Hunter Green, like coming back off of that long of an injury. I don't feel like, hey, buddy, you got to jump right back in. You can't really take 4 or 5 starts to get rolling. I don't feel like that's fair to Hunter Green, but at the same time, the Reds need what's not fair. And it's really, it's not just Hunter Green that this conversation applies to. The Reds are asking way too much out of so many guys right now because of where they're at. Like, up and down the lineup, the Reds are asking too much out of Spencer Steer. They're asking too much out of Ellie De La Cruz. They're asking too much out of Christian Encarnacion Strand. They're definitely asking way too much out of Noelvi Marte and Andrew Abbott. But that's kind of where we're at. You're fighting for a playoff spot. These guys were really supposed to just be kind of learning how to be big leaguers this year. And now they're trying to learn how to be big leaguers while they're also trying to chase down the Arizona Diamondbacks right now.
It's a young team getting asked to do a lot, for sure. Green is coming off of his best start since coming off the long-term IL. 5 1/3, 1 run, 3 hits, 6 Ks against San Francisco, August 30th. The nice part about this is that it was a fairly short stint, obviously, because it was the COVID IL. Realistically, it works out to him skipping a start. And everybody wants to advocate for Abbott skipping a start, so maybe it won't be that big of a deal for Hunter Green. Now, Hunter has pitched a lot less innings this year than Abbott because of injury and everything else, so it's a different situation, don't get me wrong. But Hunter Green's been around this team for the last couple of days. We've seen him in the dugout. We've seen him around the facility, so we know that he's there. He's getting work in. I don't think he's been off the mound long enough for it to fully affect his feel for the game and everything. I'm hopeful for him. I think he's going to come out on Sunday. I think he's got a real opportunity to pick up a dub and pitch and pick up off of the momentum he built against San Francisco.
Yeah. And I don't really know what to expect out of him on Sunday. I don't really know what to expect out of him necessarily the full rest of the season, but I will say if, and it's a big if, he can get rolling, like you mentioned, he doesn't have all this arm fatigue that everyone else has right now. If you can get him where his mechanics are all in line and all those sort of things, oh boy, he could be an absolute dangerous weapon at the end of this season because he's going to be much fresher than everyone else that he's the other starters he's going up against. And if somehow you sneak into the playoffs and you have a good Hunter Green going, we got to remember Hunter Green last year, when he came back off the IL last year, he ended the season absolutely dominant. So I don't know if he can get to like that point with this kind of short coming back, but if he does, watch out.
Well, he started it at his last start, and if he can pick up the momentum where he was, there's no reason to believe that he couldn't get to that point in this short period of time. We've got probably, depending on how you line it up for postseason and everything else, 3 or 4 starts left out of him. But yeah, if he can get in that group, he's no doubt your number one pitcher come playoff time, assuming you make the playoffs. If he can get in that group, quite frankly, I'm in a position right now where if it's not him, I don't know who it is. Because everybody else is getting to that point where they're pretty fatigued. So, yeah, I think Hunter Green not only is going to be key for this stretch, but if he can get healthy, can be really key for the playoffs as well. And like you said, at the end of last season, he got really hot as well. So there's definitely precedent for it. And I'm excited. He's going up against Miles Mikolas, who is off and on this year. Pretty decent starter for the most part. But yeah, I mean, the 3-6 with 4.75 ERA for Hunter Green this year doesn't tell the story. And I'm excited for him to get back, and I'm hopeful, given the fact that he's been around the team for the last couple of days, that he's going to be ready to rock and roll.
Is it really drinking the Kool-Aid to say that this, like, obviously not the guy getting COVID is a good thing, but this break for Brandon Williamson could be a good thing?
Again, we keep talking about potentially giving starters a start off or skipping them in a rotation or extending them out a couple of days and giving them a break. So no, I mean, I don't think it's sipping the Kool-Aid too much. I mean, you're talking about a young guy again who has not thrown this many innings in his career, and yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world for them to have an opportunity to skip this start. And the Reds have been accused of manipulation before by this chat and these conversations. So no, maybe it's not.
All right, Michael Rolfe, another super chat. My man is just incredible. I used to pitch before bye-bye UCL. I hated throwing to one catcher because he called for 100 curves, had a high stance, awful at framing, unnecessary in MLB, but I can see where pitchers would prefer certain catchers. Yeah, it's weird. Like, Austin Barnes is like the worst hitter on the planet, and the Dodgers will not get rid of him because Clayton Kershaw loves throwing him and some other guys love throwing to him. And so the whole catcher and the defense and their value, and that's the biggest mystery to me in baseball that I don't understand. I don't think I bet there's a lot of teams that don't understand why other teams employ certain guys, if we're being honest. But that whole thing is really fascinating to me.
But I think one of the things, and this is not meant to toot my horn or anything, I think it's just probably for many toot. It's probably true for a lot of people watching games. There are a lot of situations where you're watching a big game. The Tyler Stevenson at bat tonight, everybody in the world knew that Liberatore wasn't throwing his off-speed pitches for strikes. In that 3-2 situation with the bases loaded, he was going to get a fastball. Like, there are certain situations where it doesn't matter who's behind the plate. The pitch is going to be what it's going to be. I don't think there's a single catcher out there that would have called anything but a fastball in that situation, given the way that Liberatore was throwing his off-speed pitches tonight. So I think, yeah, maybe there's preferences. There's certainly certain catchers that get tendencies, and those are scouted out. But look, I saw it tonight a little bit, even with the Cardinals, where their coaches were making some calls on pitches. You could see him giving signals from the dugout. I don't think that as a major league catcher that you shouldn't be able to call a game. Like, I think there's enough scouting reports out there. There's enough information to know what you should be throwing in certain situations to certain batters and to certain from certain pitchers. But in those high pressure moments or whatever it may be, it's pretty rare to be fully surprised by a pitch in pressure moments. Like a random 1-1 count, like I may not know that you're going to throw a splitter versus a fastball versus whatever, but in the moments that matter when you could really have an effect on the game, I think most catchers are calling similar pitches in those situations, like the Tyler Stevenson at bat tonight. Everybody knew he was getting a fastball, and yet he couldn't catch up with it. So comes down to execution, Nick.
Over under 4.80 starters ERA the rest of the month. Under. Come on, Sean. We're playing some shitty baseball teams. These guys are going to rock and roll. Yeah, I feel very good about that under.
The only thing I would say is that, again, because our arms are pretty worn down, they're going to be doing pretty short outings. So even 2 innings over 4 1/3 or 5 innings adds up pretty quickly. So I would probably reluctantly go over, but that doesn't mean that I think our pitching staff's going to struggle. It just means that I think our starting pitcher specifically, you're going to see a lot of these. What was it tonight for Abbott? 4 innings. So 4 innings, even if you only give up 2 runs, what's the ERA on that, Nick? You're smarter than I am. It's over 4.5.
Not going to be many of these tonight. They're not happening again. Not happening again. I think it'll be under 4. Let's go.
Let's go.
Nick, why are you obsessed with Ty Steve? Did you watch the Reds the last 2 weeks?
I think we're obsessed with the idea of Ty Steve. We're obsessed with what he can be. But we've been obsessed with what he can be for like 3 years now. So it's not anything new. It's just, young players are going to go through ebbs and flows. We're obsessed with his highs, and we just want to minimize those lows.
Cards crushed Atlanta 2 games. Why do we think we're dealing with an easy team? Well, because their pitching's garbage. I mean, that's why. I mean, their offense is capable. There's no question about it. But, I mean, the Reds were 1 swing away from putting up 8 runs off of them. And I think that's pretty realistic. I mean, maybe 2 swings away from putting up 10 runs off of them. So, again, I think their pitching's pretty bad. I think their bullpen's terrible. The next 2 starters aren't as bad. I mean, I really wish you were facing Adam Wainwright in this series. I mean, I can't believe they're still running that dude out there every 5th day.
Unreal.
They're just. I mean, I don't. That's a wild. You could do a whole 40-minute show on what are they doing with Adam Wainwright. But
someone brought it up in the chat earlier in the show too, and we didn't point it out at the time, but they asked about momentum, and I think your point is true. Offensively, the Cardinals have not struggled that mightily this season. Offensively, they're very capable. The pitching has let them down significantly. So yeah, them beating the Braves only justifies that. They had a couple of good outings from pitchers or just outscored the Braves. I don't think that necessarily means anything. So no.
And their bullpen got out of some jams tonight, but they do that again, I don't think they're going to get out of a jam. I think that I think the Reds are going to have they're going to have at least 1 inning this series where they just completely go off on the Cardinals bullpen because they have a lot of really they have 4 or 5 guys in their bullpen right now that shouldn't even be sniffing a major league mound. So that's why that's why I don't think they're very good. It's just their pitching, but their offense is better than the Reds. For sure. If I could switch offenses for the next 3 weeks, I'd take the Cardinals offense. But the Reds pitching they don't have a Hunter Green. They don't have a Lucas Sims. I mean, they have a Alexis Diaz, but they don't have a Lucas Sims. They don't have an Ian Jabot, and they don't have a Fernando Cruz. I know he had a rough night tonight, but yeah. All right. Anything else here before we go to tomorrow?
I could always save it. I could save it for tomorrow too, since I'll be back. But
You'll forget.
I know. I mean, I'm really going to get the chat going with this one. I think they've mentioned it before, and I'm going to ask it. I'm trying to remember who it was. A number of years ago, we had the same conversation. Long term, is Ellie a switch hitter? Is there a point where you just keep him on the left side of the plate? And let me preface this. I haven't looked at his. Obviously, there's no splits of him facing left-handed pitching from the left-handed side of the plate. So I have no idea what would happen if you put him over there. But hitting from the right side of the plate, all he does is ground the ball straight into the ground every single at bat. Like, we saw plenty of highlights in the minors, so I'm probably being a little facetious here. I don't actually think that he's going to stop playing or batting switch. I don't think he's going to stop being a switch hitter. But at the same time, I do get a little frustrated seeing him hit weak ground balls every single time he's up to the plate on the right-hand side.
What I would add to that conversation is he's come a long way in his switch hitting. I know in AAA this year, he started out like for 15 or something against lefties, and then actually went on a really good stretch. That's obviously going to be his weaker side, but if he switches, that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna fix it either. It's still probably going to be his weak side. So I think maybe it's a conversation. I know Tucker Barnhart abandoned. I mean, Tucker Barnhart. I can't believe I just someone told, clip me up now. Nick Kirby compares Ellie De La Cruz to Tucker Barnhart. But I mean, it may come to that point where it's like, yeah, it needs to happen, but now's not the time. Not when the guy's 21 years old, barely got his feet wet in Major League Baseball. I think you'd want to at least give him a full 2024 season before you maybe even entertain this type of conversation. That would kind of be where I'm at. I'm not saying it can't ever get to that point. I just don't think they're anywhere close to that now.
Yeah. No, and I'm not disagreeing with you by any means. I do think that having him in the lineup, regardless of who's pitching, is valuable because of what he can do on the base paths and just creating chaos. So I think whether he bats from the right-handed or the left-handed side, I think he still contributes to the offense. And so I guess maybe that extra 2 steps out of the box from the left-handed side, if he's just going to hit ground balls all the time anyway, maybe it would be beneficial. I mean, there was a batted ball tonight where he would have beat it out if he was batting from the left-handed side. But
how many of the 19 left can the Reds win? All right, this will be our last question before we get on to tomorrow. How many? I don't know. I mean, I feel like I said I don't really know what to expect these last 3 weeks. Like, they got a chance because of their schedule. Oh, I don't know. Let's say if we're being realistic, they take 1 of 2 from the Cardinals the next 2 days. And I hope they take both, but I'm going to say they take 2 of 3 from Detroit. So that gets us to 3 wins. I'm going to say they take 2 of 3 from the Mets. That gets us to 5 wins. I'm going to say they take 1 of 3 from the Twins. That gets us to 6 wins. 2 of 3 from the Pirates. That gets us 8. Split with Cleveland. That gives us 9. And then 2 of 3. I mean, I think they could win 11. What does that get them to? That gets them to 84. I mean, I think they can get to 84. I think they can get to 84 without doing anything extraordinary. But who knows? I mean, could this team go on another 6 or 7 game win streak? They've gone on 5-6 game win streaks this year. I mean, is that not possible against some of these teams? But you can't predict a 6 game win streak. So that's where you really, in a lot of ways, you throw everything out the window in terms of what you expect the team's going to do over this small of a window. Right? I mean, I also still think there's a possibility. I'm going to pull up the standings here so I can I still think there's a possibility. The Reds are 3.5 behind the Cubs right now. That's not that far. They're 5.5 behind the Phillies right now. Are we 100% sure that the Cubs aren't going to come crashing back down to earth and aren't going to have an August they're going to have a month like the Reds had in August? I mean, they got a tough schedule. I mean, that kind of stuff is possible. So if that happens, then you could have 2 paths in. So really, there's not really a whole lot of logic. I wish I could tell you, yeah, I feel great about the Reds. I don't. I also don't feel terrible about the Reds. I think you've got yourself in a chance where you're a game and a half out with 19 games to play. You have the easiest of the schedules. And it's just you play the games and you see what happens. That's what makes the sport fun.
I've got them winning 13.
That's what I want to hear, Craig. That's what I want to hear.
I
Throw the
agree with
logic
you.
out. Throw it out.
As you go through the schedule that you were going through, I agree with most of what you said. And in going through it the other day, I had very similar results. As things have kind of progressed, we're sweeping the Guardians. So that's the one that changed for me. They have given up. Tito has given up. They're done.
And I'll be there. And
you'll be there.
I mean, the motivation they need.
So I think you can move some games around. Maybe they sweep. Maybe they take 2 from the Twins and then lose one that they shouldn't, or whatever it may be. I think 13 is where I'm going to land at right now, because of the way the offense is going and because of getting back people like Hunter Green and Brandon Williams into the starting rotation. I think 13 is not out of the realm for this team, out of the 9 games or out of the 19 games that are remaining. So hold on to your hats. I mean, it's going to be a wild ride, and no, 3.5 back from the Cubs is not unobtainable with the schedule that they have left.
Well, unfortunately, it might be the Diamondbacks that just run them out of town, and then the Cubs come back to earth, but you'll lose the Diamondbacks. They run away from you. So I don't know. It's really, this is going to be a daily thing where you wake up, you look at the standings, and I think there's going to be a lot of big swings where you're going to be like, oh, I feel really good. There's going to be some bad swings like tonight where you go, oh, that's a gut punch. But I don't know. This team has somehow hung around all year against all odds. All right, let's look at tomorrow's matchup.
We talk about it every show, Nick. We're scoreboard watching on September 8th.
Hell yeah.
And we're going to be scoreboard watching through September. So enjoy it.
All right, tomorrow, Reds, Cardinals. Reds need it 6:40 on a Saturday. It'll be Zach Thompson, another lefty going for the Cardinals. He is 4-5 with a 3.91 ERA this year. Thompson was actually a first-round draft pick of the Cardinals, 19th overall out of the University of Kentucky, so he's got some local ties. Born and raised in Selma, Indiana. That's about 2 hours away from Cincinnati. Grew up a Cubs fan, so this has got to be a real wild game for him, pitching for the Cardinals against the Reds. Thompson, he was a guy that really wasn't on the radar. He was a high draft pick, but really has kind of struggled through the minors. He started in the majors this year, got sent back down, got called back up, really struggled mightily with his command. This guy walked over 10 batters per 9 innings at AAA this year. But somehow, some way, since moving into the Cardinals rotation on August 6th in 29 innings, he's got a 3.41 ERA. So he has been pitching really well. But you know what? Maybe he's due for a stinker. He's never started against the Reds, but has pitched 5 innings relief. They were 5 shutout innings, but those were all last year, not this year. For the Reds, it'll be Carson Spires. What a story he's been. He was in the AA bullpen a little over a month ago. MLB debut on Sunday against the Cubs, 4 innings, 3 runs. Kept the ball in the ballpark, which is good to see. No home runs, struck out 7, only walked 2. And look, he's been on a roll. Last 9 starts at AA Chattanooga before he got promoted. He had a 2.40 ERA, striking out a ton of batters over 12 per 9. So see if you can get it done tomorrow. Big start for him. Reds do, Craig, have a pretty rested bullpen tomorrow, at least with their top dogs. Diaz has had 2 days off. Or Diaz has had 3 days off. Sims has had 3 days off. Jabot's had 4 days off. Mole's had 2 days off. So
when was
that's
last
good.
time Ian Jabot had 4 days off, Nick?
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, look, Zach Thompson's coming in. Like you said, started the year in the bullpen, was roughed up. Excuse me. Spent some time in the minors. In his 5 games as a starter, 3.6 ERA, 25 innings, 10 runs, the 7 walks that you talked about. Opponents are hitting 271 against him. So, this offense can stay hot, and there's certainly a winnable ball game tomorrow. Carson Spires, like you said, kept the ball in the ballpark. So, and had 7 strikeouts in those 4 innings. So, we'll see what he can do tomorrow against this potent Cardinals lineup.
And I can't imagine the Reds are asking all that much out of him tomorrow. Like, it may legitimately be one time through the order unless he's rolling, especially with kind of where your bullpen's at. You got an off day on Monday. So you can, maybe be a little more aggressive with Hunter Green on Sunday. Knock on wood. We're hoping that he can come back and be, fairly effective.
Yeah, and Sean asks over under 4.5 innings for Spires. I think you go
hammer the under. I'd probably say under 3.5 innings. I would say I would guess the Reds are hoping maybe for 3 innings. I don't think they're even looking for more than that.
No, but especially with that rested bullpen, I don't think you need it. But yeah, a winnable ball game.
All right, Craig, you got any final thoughts? I got one more final thought before we roll out of here.
Here's my final thought. Difficult to find spots for Votto in India. Everybody seems so convinced that India is going to be a better option, myself included. OPS on the year, 51 games Votto, 761 OPS. Jonathan India, 744 OPS in 133 games. Votto in his 51 games, 33 RBIs. India in his 103, 52 RBIs. Joey Votto only batting 200 versus Jonathan India 251, but numbers not that different. And yet everybody seems so convinced that India is going to be a much bigger addition to the lineup. Votto 13 home runs, India 14.
Something to ponder. All right.
Something to ponder.
My final thought. Last Friday in the afternoon, Reds got all those injury news. Everyone going on the IL. Friday night, the Reds started Lyon Richardson, guy who started the year at Daytona this season. Next game, the Reds started Andrew Abbott, guy that started at AA this season. The next game, they started Carson Spires, guy that was in the AA bullpen a month ago. The next game, they started TJ Antone, a guy coming back from Tommy John surgery. Their bulk reliever was a guy named Michael Marriott, who had an ERA of near 7 at AAA. Next game, they started Connor Phillips, started the year at AA. Was not even expected to pitch again. Pitch in the big leagues this year. The next game, they started Lyon Richardson, who we already said, started the year in Daytona. And then again tonight, they started Andrew Abbott, a guy that started the year at AA. What was the Reds' record over those games, Craig? 4-3.
You're going to tell me. Yep.
4-3. I mean, the Reds survived a stretch that could have absolutely derailed this season. And any reasonable person would look at that and say, yeah, I mean, that's pretty understandable that it did. They survived it. I know we haven't got a whole lot of help in the wild card race over the last couple of days, but that's going to change. Come on. These teams aren't that good. They're going to start coming. Everything finds its level. And still alive. 19 games to play. We'll be here every single night talking about it. Craig, you're a legend. Appreciate everyone in the chat for watching and hanging along. Of course, Chatterbox Reds everywhere you get podcasts. I would really love it if you haven't yet, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. That stuff really, really helps us out. I would appreciate that. And there's a ton of other shows on Chatterbox Sports right now. The golf match number 2, Chatterbox Bengals on Sunday. Of course, watch that later. Don't watch it live because we'll be on live. Come on. We're the OGs here. No, I'm just kidding. You can pick whatever. But there's just so much good content on Chatterbox Sports. Make sure you check it all out. Make sure you support everyone else. And we'll see you tomorrow night about 9 o'clock. Looking forward to it, Craig.
Always a pleasure, Nick.
An honor. See you tomorrow, everyone.